Episode 17. Can you hear me now? Alright, sit back, relax. Put the kids to bed, kiss your loved ones goodnight. 10-minute off-road podcast is about to begin. Alright, welcome to the 10-minute off-road podcast. I'm your host, Nikki G. I'm here to entertain, talk about, and delight you in all things off-road for the next 10 minutes or so. Why 10 minutes? Because that's how long it'll take for my microwave burrito to cool to the ultimate temperature, where it's crispy on the outside and a nice, mild temperature on the inside. Not the temperature that'll burn your tongue and scald your throat, but a nice, consumable temperature. All right, last week we talked about navigation and maps, and we dabbled a little bit into communications. So this week I'd like to continue our discussion with communications. And we talked about how CB is dying, and that's, in my opinion, when I'm out on the trails, very few people nowadays go with CBs. I started out with the Midland 785 handheld CB, which is a good CB, but the range on it was about 2 Jeeps ahead and 2 Jeeps behind. I couldn't tell what was going on because it was the range on it was very minimal. It's good in a pinch, and it's not a bad CB to have, but I quickly realized that I needed something with a little bit more power. So I went with the Midland 75 A22 with a 5 foot with a 4 foot fire stick, and that gives me pretty good range, and it works very well. Compatible radio I was also looking at was the Cobra 75 Wxst. Now these are both I guess you would call them micro radios or mini radios. It's the radio is contained in the mic. They're very small, perfect for fitting in vehicles that don't have much room. If you have a lot of room to put a radio in, I would get $40 truck stop radio. Get one off. You get a radio off Amazon, $40, $30 brand new. I would go that route if I had the room for them, but being in my Jeep, it's kind of tight. I go with micro radios. Now, a lot of people don't use the CB as much. Like I say, I use mine, I think, so far once this year. Or no, twice. Twice on a trail ride we used the CBs. So far, twice. What I've been using a lot is I have a handheld Bofang 5UR, which is a ham radio. So I need a ham license to use the full capabilities of it. Or I can get a GSMR license and just hit the GSMR frequencies legally, which I haven't even done that yet. I will say if you get the Bofang, you have to get the data cord for it so you can program it with a program called Chirp. I was lucky enough to have a friend of mine, Steve, had the frequencies, GSMR frequencies loaded on a laptop, and he just put them on my radio for me, which thank you, Steve. And it works great. And that's the majority of the time, that's what I've been using. And it is 5 watts, so it's limited range. It's about a little bit better than the CB. But I'm thinking about getting a unit mounted in my Jeep like a CB, which is I'm looking at correct me if I could pronounce this wrong, but it's the Baojie J318, which looks pretty much like the Bofang radio, but just in like the traditional CB format, if you would call it. So it'll fit in my truck, and that has 25 watts, which I figure will give me a little bit more range in case I'm ever stuck somewhere and I just need to get a signal out. And that's the main reason why I really want to carry a ham radio, is in an emergency situation. And I tell you, I've been studying for the test to get my ham license. I think it's the technician is the first level, and it is so dry and boring. I just can't. I don't do good in a classroom environment like that. So I've really been thinking about reaching out to the local ham radio club and seeing what they suggest and how to obtain my license a little bit easier, and see if they could recommend some online. Even the online study guides I've come across have just been like, I start into it and I'm asleep in 3 minutes. So, but it looks like a fun hobby and people enjoy it. I'm not knocking it in any way. I just, the more and more I look into it, it's not for me. I'm even contemplating just running without a license, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be no FCC agent on the top of the mountain waiting for me to talk to somebody. Well, I'd also like to point out, you can get a ham radio and you can listen to it all day long for free, no license required. And you could even use it in an emergency situation without fear of repercussion or, not breaking the law, because you're allowed to do that. So I'm thinking about getting it anyhow, just for that situation, and still try to work on my license. But I'm ready to run without a license. And the GSMR portion, you don't have to take a test. You just pay the fee. And I believe it's good for 5 years and it covers your family. I might be wrong on that. That's what I might do just to stay legal. And I can guarantee you that if you talk to 100 people that are running GSMR radios, only a handful of them got the license. It's good to get. I would recommend getting the Bofang 5UR or one similar to that. Bofang makes a radio like the 5UR that charges through USB. So you just plug it right into a USB port and plug it into the radio. And now the 5UR I have to charge the battery in a cradle, which is just one more piece I have to carry on the trail. Can't remember the number of the radio I was looking at, but it was like $5 more than the 5UR, which only cost me like $23. So for under $30, $50, it's a good radio to have, the Bofang or something similar. And if you're running with people that are running GSMR, you put in a frequency and you just set on your dash, and you can listen to all the comments. The trail guide says this, you're listening to it, that's legal. Somebody 2 Jeeps back says, hey, I'm stuck, I need a spotter. You pull over and get out. That's legal. It's just as soon as you click that mic and say, hey, I'm on my way, you're breaking the law. And let's face it, it's a minimal law, I guess, if that's a word. I don't think you're going to go to jail over it. You'll get a fine, maybe. I'm assuming that if there just happens to be an FCC agent on a mountain somewhere within 5 miles from you and actually sees you click the mic, or I don't even know how they could tell you click the mic, and gives you a fine, I think I would be very impressed and I would pay the fine. But the chances of that happening is very minimal. I would say get a radio, see if you're going to use it, reduce the amount of talking you do on it so you're not breaking the law as much, and decide for yourself whether it's worth getting a license for. I talk on GSMR. I go on maybe a dozen trail rides a year with a large group of people, or with a group of people that I actually need GSMR with, or need a radio. And so for that dozen times a year, maybe, I don't think it'll pay for me to pay for a license. I'm probably talking about maybe 5 sentences a trip. It's sometimes we do a lot of chitter chatter and banter, and that's a lot of fun. That's part of it too. But sometimes I'm just kind of quiet and into it and enjoying it. I'm curious to hear what you guys run. How many people still use CBs? I keep my CB in my glove box. I don't like it sitting out because it's only about the size of a softball. So I'll pull it out and plug it in whenever I'm driving down the road and traffic backs up. Plug it in, And you hear the truckers talking about what's going on. Truckers still use CB and stay on channel 19 a lot. I'm wondering, do truckers use GSMR? I've never really heard that. And there's so many GSMR frequencies. Is there a common one that they all kind of tune to? I don't know. That might be another topic for another day. Let me know what you guys run. I'm curious to hear. And if I ever get a chance to get out and talk to everybody, that's one of my questions is, what are you doing for communications? All right. So that's about all the time I have for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can catch the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Podbean. Yeah, I know, man. That's the real thing. Have you guys checked it out? It's not as bad as it sounds. YouTube seems to be the most popular way that people watch this podcast. I appreciate it. Any way you listen to it is always great. You can contact me. You can direct message us through our Facebook page at 10 Minute Off-Road Podcast. On Twitter, which seems to be dying out a little bit, at 10 Minute Off-Road Podcast. And also the Gram, 10 Minute Off-Road Podcast. Or you could email us at 10minuteoffroad@gmail.com. And I haven't checked that email in a long time, but last time I checked it, I was getting a pretty good offer from the Prince of Nigeria. He seems to be having some financial difficulty that only we at the 10 Minute Off-Road Podcast can help. And, when somebody asks for help, you got to help out. Plus, he seems like a pretty cool dude. And he's also worried that my car warranty might expire. You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel. YouTube seems to be the most popular way to interact with people. That through Facebook and then also through my lawyers. That was a joke that went horribly wrong just now. Sorry. All right. So thank you for listening. And until next time, this is Nikki G saying, wheel what you got and be happy.